Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been seeing some really um, interesting stuff about these tariffs Trump's been putting in place.
Yeah.
The stock market's going crazy, and everyone's talking about a trade war, and it's all a little overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in, for sure.
So today we're going to try to break down what exactly these tariffs are, and who they really impact.
All right.
Because it's not just like these big corporations; it's like you and me,
Yeah. Right, yeah.
And then we're going to zoom out and look at, what kind of global shock waves we might be in for.
Okay.
This is all based on some really interesting stuff I've been reading. And one of the things that really caught my eye was how even treasury bonds are being affected.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? So we're going to have to unpack that a little bit too, because that's a really big deal. And,
Yeah, it can be a sign of things to come, for sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
So much to cover. So let's just dive right in. Can we just start with tariffs 101, I think people get the basic idea, but it's one of those things that's good to just make sure everyone's on the same page.
Definitely. So I guess the easiest way to think about it is like a tax on goods coming into the country.
Okay, so if I buy something from, let's say, China, I have to pay extra because of this tariff.
Exactly. It's like a penalty for buying stuff from those countries.
And so which countries are we talking about here?
Well, in this case, it's Canada, Mexico, and China.
Okay, and so what are the actual percentages we're talking about?
So for Canada and Mexico, it's 25%.
Wow, 25%.
Yep, it's a big chunk of change.
Mm-hmm.
And then for China, it's 20% total now.
So they basically added another 10% on top of what was already there, right?
Yep, exactly.
That's pretty intense. So what's the reasoning behind all of this? Why is the Trump administration doing this?
Well, they've given a few different reasons, like protecting American jobs, for one,
Right, yeah.
and then also curbing drug trafficking,
Mm-hmm.
trying to stop the flow of fentanyl from coming in.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then there's the whole issue of trade imbalances.
Right.
Like they say China's not playing fair,
Yeah, I've heard that.
and then they're even using it as leverage in border security negotiations.
So a bargaining chip almost.
Exactly. Like, do what we want, or we'll make it even more expensive for you to sell your stuff here.
It sounds pretty risky, though,
It's
right?
definitely a gamble.
Yeah.
But it seems like the ultimate goal is to force these countries to renegotiate trade deals,
On terms that are more favorable to the U.S.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the goal. But how's it actually playing out? Because I've been hearing the markets haven't exactly been thrilled about all of this.
Oh, no, not at all. Literally hours after the announcement, the stock market just went haywire.
So what happened exactly?
Well, the Dow Jones, which is one of the big U.S. stock indices, it plummeted 650 points.
650 points.
Yeah, it's a 1.5% drop.
Oh, wow.
And then the S&P 500, which is another key index, that one fell by 1.8%.
And what about the tech stocks?
Oh, yeah, the NASDAQ, that one took the biggest hit.
Really?
Yeah, it went down by 2.6%.
So that's a pretty big drop across the board.
Yeah.
What's causing all this fear? What are investors so freaked out about?
Well, it boils down to two main things, really.
Mm.
Inflationary pressures and supply chain disruptions.
Okay, so break that down for us because, those terms sound a little like Wall Street jargon.
Right. Okay, so think about it this way. Inflation, that means prices go up, right?
Yeah.
So with these tariffs, all those imported goods suddenly become more expensive.
Right, because those businesses have to pay more to get those goods into the country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they pass those costs onto, the consumer.
So basically everything gets more expensive for us.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole supply chain disruption thing.
So what does that mean in real world terms?
Well, think about all the stuff we use every day that has components from other countries.
Okay. Yeah.
So with these tariffs, everything gets held up at customs, and it creates these huge delays and shortages.
Oh, I see.
And, businesses that rely on those global supply chains, they really struggle to keep up. And then you go to the store, and your favorite stuff's just not there anymore.
So it's not just that things cost more, it's that they might not even be available.
Exactly. It's a double whammy.
Not exactly a good situation.
No, not really.
So it's this ripple effect, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everything's so interconnected.
But let's zoom in for a second. Are there any specific industries or companies that are really getting hit hard by all of this?
Oh, yeah, for sure. One of the big ones is the auto industry.
Okay, so how are they being affected?
Well, you've got companies like General Motors and Ford, right?
Yeah, American companies.
Right, exactly. But they have a lot of their manufacturing in Mexico and Canada.
Okay.
So those tariffs we were talking about, they're really hitting them hard.
So even though they're American companies, the fact that they have factories in other countries means they still get hit with these tariffs.
Exactly. And it's not just the tariffs on the cars themselves.
Oh, right.
Yes, there's more. Yeah, there are also tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Which is like what they use to make cars.
Exactly. So now they're getting hit with all these extra costs for materials.
So what does that mean for them? Like, what's the impact?
Well, their profits are going to take a hit, that's for sure.
And then what happens?
And then they have to raise prices for consumers.
Yeah.
You know, so in the end, it's like we're the ones who end up paying for it.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like this chain reaction.
that makes sense. And I was also reading that like smaller businesses and tech companies are also getting squeezed by this whole tariff thing.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely feeling the pain too.
So why is that? Like, why are they so vulnerable?
Well, a lot of them rely heavily on global suppliers,
Okay.
like take computer chips, for example. A lot of those come from China.
Right.
And these companies, they often operate on like really thin margins. So even a small price increase can really mess with their bottom line.
And the bigger companies can kind of absorb that a bit more.
Exactly. They have more wiggle room. It's like the difference between getting hit by like a little wave versus a tsunami.
Exactly. And, the long-term consequences are still really uncertain for both the big guys and the little guys.
Yeah, that's kind of scary when you think about it. And the thing is, this isn't just like a U.S. problem, right?
No, not at all. It's a global economy. We're all connected.
So what's the reaction been like in other major markets?
Well, everyone's a little on edge,
Yeah, that's understandable.
Like the major Asian markets, they all dipped as soon as the news hit.
So like Japan and all that?
Yeah, like Japan's Nikkei and Hong Kong's Hang Seng, they all took a hit.
Okay.
And in Europe, it's kind of a mixed bag.
How so?
Well, some markets actually went up a little bit.
Really? Why is that?
It seems like there were some easing inflation fears in the Eurozone.
Eurozone, what's that?
Oh, sorry. It's just the economic region of countries that use the euro.
Oh, okay.
But overall, there's definitely a lot of caution and uncertainty.
Yeah, I can imagine. But it's not just the stock market that's freaking out, right?
You're right. It's way beyond that.
Like, what else are we seeing?
Well, even the U.S. dollar has been fluctuating like crazy.
Wow.
And get this, investors are pouring money into what are called safe haven assets.
Safe haven assets. What are those?
So these are like investments that are considered really stable and reliable, especially during times of uncertainty.
Okay, so like what kind of investments?
Well, one of the big ones is treasury bonds.
Treasury bonds, those are like the super safe ones, right?
Exactly. Like when people get nervous, they park their money in treasury bonds just to like ride out the storm.
So basically, even the safest investments are feeling a little shaky right now.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a sign that there's a lot of global anxiety right now.
Okay, so let's try to look at the bright side here. Are there any potential benefits to all of this, or is it just like a total disaster?
Well, I mean, it's important to remember that tariffs could actually protect some American industries.
How so?
Well, when those imported goods become more expensive, it can make domestically produced goods more competitive. And that could potentially lead to more jobs in those sectors.
So there's like a potential silver lining for some parts of the economy?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
But it's really important to remember that tariffs are kind of a double-edged sword.
What do you mean?
Well, they might help some industries, but they also come with some pretty big risks.
Okay, so what are some of those risks? Like, what's the worst case scenario here?
Well, one of the big worries is something called stagflation.
Stagflation.
Yeah, it's like this nasty combination of like no economic growth and prices going through the roof.
So it's like the worst of both worlds.
Exactly. And there are already signs that the markets are getting kind of jittery.
Oh, really? Like what kind of signs?
Well, the VIX index, it's sometimes called the fear gauge.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
That's spiked up quite a bit lately.
And what does that tell us?
Well, basically, the VIX measures like how volatile the market is. So when it jumps up like that, it means investors are feeling really uncertain about the future.
So it's basically like a barometer for how scared Wall Street is.
Pretty much, yeah.
It sounds like things could get really bad if we're not careful.
Yeah, it's definitely a slippery slope.
But here's a thought. What if all of this is part of like a bigger strategy? What if the Trump administration is actually playing this like high stakes game of tariff chicken?
Yeah, that's a theory that's been floating around.
So like, what's the thinking there?
Well, the idea is that they're intentionally trying to like shake things up, create this sense of panic in the markets.
And use that as leverage.
Exactly. Like they're trying to force these other countries to make deals that are more favorable to the U.S.
It's a pretty bold move.
Oh, it's definitely a gamble. Like they're basically playing poker with the global economy.
So the big question is, will it work? Like if the market keeps tanking, Are they going to back down or are they going to double down? What do you think?
It's really hard to say at this point.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, these tariffs have created a huge amount of uncertainty.
And that's never good.
No, not for the markets and not for the economy as a whole.
So where do we go from here? Like, what should people be paying attention to?
We'll keep an eye on the White House. See what they're saying about all of this
Okay.
and watch what Canada, Mexico, and China are doing. Are they talking? Are they fighting? That'll give you some clues about where things are headed.
Right.
And also pay attention to the economic data.
Yeah, what kind of data?
Well, are prices going up on everyday stuff? Is
Um,
the economy slowing down? If we start seeing signs of that stagflation we were talking about, that's a bad sign.
Yeah, that's definitely something to watch out for. And I guess we should also keep an eye on the stock market.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a roller coaster right now, but it can give you a sense of where things might be going.
So basically, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and we just have to kind of wait and see what happens.
Yeah, that's about the gist of it.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, it's been great talking about this.
We've covered a lot of ground today. We went from Tariff 101 to the potential for a global economic meltdown.
Yeah, we really went deep.
But I think one of the key takeaways here is that everything is connected.
Oh, absolutely.
Like what happens in one part of the world can have these huge ripple effects everywhere else.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that we're all in this together.
So what can our listeners do know in light of all this?
Well, first of all, stay informed. Keep learning about this stuff.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
Exactly. And
Right.
then, be prepared to adapt because things are changing really quickly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, this has been another great deep dive.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's shaping your world. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and as always, thanks for listening.